appreciate you. And if you're new here and you enjoy whispered true crime, please consider subscribing to the channel. I post 2 times a week, on Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I recommend using headphones if you would like to hear the gentle mic brushing. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like and a comment. And please check out my main channel, my ASMR addiction, link in the description box. Okay, let's get right to the case. Tonight we are traveling to Missouri. Shout out to all my friends in Missouri. This case occurred in 2017, and it is the case of Ben Renick. So let's start off with some background on Ben. He was born on August 4th, 1986 in St. Louis, Missouri, to his father Frank and mother Charlene. He also had a brother named Sam, who was just 2 years older than him. And as children, they were extremely close. They spent so much of their time together, playing outside and doing the things that young brothers do together. Now, Ben grew up in a farmhouse on a farm in New Florence, Missouri. And his parents had actually designed and built the farmhouse, and it was stunning. He spent much of his time playing outside, and he grew to love the outdoors and the wilderness, and specifically snakes. He would later say, quote, "I have always had a fascination with wildlife, which began at a very early age. I spent a lot of time going on hikes and collecting various insects, snakes, and lizards. So my parents took me to a local pet shop where I ended up with my very first snake, a yellow rat snake. Over time, I accumulated a few more king snakes and milk snakes as well. But then I got my very first ball python, and it was all over from there. I was hooked." End quote. Now, unfortunately, in 1992, while nobody was home, there was an explosion in the house, and the whole house caught on fire and burned down. Investigators determined that a storage tank had leaked 3,000 gallons of propane into the house, which led to the explosion. So the family moved into a trailer on their property while a new house was being built. And at the same time, they were having a reptile house built on the property as well for Ben to keep his collection of snakes going. Now, unfortunately, around this same time, Ben's mother, Kim, was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. So not only had their house burned to the ground and they were living in a trailer, but now the mom was Kim's dying wish that the farm be kept in the family. Now at this time, Ben had started a breeding business, a snake or reptile breeding business in that reptile house right there on the family farm. And he named his business Renick's Reptiles. Very catchy name. He sold exotic snakes worldwide. He attended events to promote his snakes, and he was known as one of the best breeders in the entire world. And it wasn't all about money. He wasn't just in it to make money or be famous. He loved snakes. He truly did. He had a passion for what he was doing. But at the same time, he was making a lot of money, so that was a plus, of course. At the height of his business, he had around 3,000 snakes. Many of them were extremely large. His brother had said one of them was almost 500 pounds. I can't even imagine that. I don't know if he had misspoken or what. If you know, are there snakes that are 500 pounds? Because I am shocked to hear that. So anyway, in 2010, Ben met a woman named Lindley at a party. She was a single woman. She had a child from a previous relationship, and they had a lot in common. And she was interested in his business, like she wanted to learn more about snakes, and she helped him do his work as well. And she wound up getting pregnant with their daughter, and she gave birth in March of 2012. Ben loved Lindley, and he loved the two children that they had together. One being hers from a previous relationship, and one was the daughter that they shared. And he was an excellent father to both of the kids. But tragedy struck once again to this family. His father, Frank, was in financial trouble due to all the money he had spent on Kim's cancer treatment. He had been involved in some illegal financial transactions to keep things afloat, and the FBI was investigating him, and he was surely going to be found guilty. He was going to lose everything, including the entire farm. And remember, Kim said her dying wish was for the farm to stay with the family. So, sadly, Frank unalived himself right before the FBI started the full investigation. And I would assume that he either did it because he wanted the farm to stay with his family. He didn't want it to be lost to the authorities in this financial mess, or he himself just didn't want to face going to prison. It was one or the other, or maybe a little both. So Ben inherited the farm and the house, and his brother Sam inherited the money. At this time, Sam was married and he had kids, and he built another house on the property that Ben had. So he was living there with his family, and in the else, they butted heads a lot. They had nothing in common, and they fought a lot about finances. Now, shortly after the death of his father, Ben married Lindley in 2014, and he gave her money to open up her own business in town that was a spa that would do things like massages. And it turned out that it was losing money over time, and they wound up fighting about this constantly. It was a major source of contention between them. Now, about 3 years into the marriage, Lindley was unfaithful to Ben with at least 2 other men. Texts between the couple show that Ben was suspicious of this, that he realized that this was going on, or he thought that it probably was, and their relationship was in trouble. Also, in 2017, he made a huge sale of some of the snakes, the exotic snakes. It was $1 million sale, and the customer was paying it off quarterly, giving him $200,000 each quarter. So prior to his receiving the second installment, the second $200,000, he was found dead on the floor in his reptile house. It was June 8th of 2017, and Lindley came home to find him like that. He was only 29 at the time, and there was blood everywhere. She called 911 in hysterics, and Sam, his brother, he came right over because he was living, on the same property. So Lindley handed the phone to Sam, and she ran out. She ran outside. She was so distraught. So Sam went on to tell the dispatcher that his little brother was dead, and that he had been killed by a snake. So the police headed right over there. It was about 6:30 p.m. when the police arrived on the scene, and of course they were very nervous that there was potentially a killer snake loose in this reptile house. And they talked about how they would have to shoot the snake if they found it, the killer snake. So they very carefully crept in there, looking everywhere. They didn't see a snake that was loose, but they saw all these many, I don't know if you call them cages or what, of snakes, up on all the walls, and they hadn't ever seen such a thing, so they were kind of shocked. But not as shocked as they were to see the deceased man on the ground, of course. That was the big tragedy. And the coroner came and determined that he was not killed by a snake at all, but he had been shot with a gun by a human. A human snake had shot him, if you know what I mean. He had been shot 8 times in the back and head. In fact, his head had been shot so horrifically, like, I won't get into it, but that's why they couldn't really tell what had happened to him, if he had been shot or attacked by a snake or what. So right away, the police brought Lindley and Sam down to the sheriff's office for interviews, separately of course. And Lindley admitted that they were having financial troubles, and she said that she and Ben So they spoke with Sam as well, and he also talked about financial issues, and he said that he and Ben didn't get along all that well. He said that Ben was always bragging about money and his business, that he was doing so much better than Sam. And Sam said that he thought maybe Ben was shot by one of the people who had been wronged by their father, Frank. Somebody who had lost money in the whole financial mess over there. So both Lindley and Sam were tested for gunshot residue, and neither one came up positive, so they were released. All of Ben's prized snakes wound up being sold to various reptile experts and enthusiasts. Lindley went on to collect Ben's life insurance of $1 million and sell the farm as fast as she could. She told Sam he had 30 days, 30 days, to vacate the property, because she owned the property and was selling it, like I said, so he had to get out. At this point, he decided she was the main suspect. He believed she was the killer of Ben because, in his words, she had just gotten $3 million richer. There was the $1 million in life insurance. There was the $1 million in the sale of those snakes. The original $1 million deal that hadn't been paid off yet, but would be. That was $1 million. And the sale of the farm and the rest of the snakes. So it was estimated by him to be about $3 million that she got. Now, Lindley was interviewed by investigators 6 times. She took a polygraph test, and the results showed that she was being deceptive. But other than that, there was no real evidence tying her to Ben's death, so she was not charged. She went on to buy a new home and quickly got a new boyfriend named Brandon Blackwell, and they had a child, but their relationship quickly turned sour, and she had filed an order of protection against him, and when he broke the order, he was arrested. So he figured that if he was going to get a lesser charge or a shorter sentence or whatever, he would give them some information that he had. He said that Lindley had told him that she was responsible for Ben's murder. He said that Lindley had conspired with her coworker named Ashley Shaw and her old ex-boyfriend Michael Humphrey. So the 3 were arrested. That was January of 2020. Michael Humphrey told the police that he agreed to go to the farm with Lindley because she told him that Ben was abusing her, and he had given her his gun as a way of protecting herself. He had no idea she was going to use it, but she had asked him to go with her to speak to Ben because she wanted to tell him that she wanted a divorce, and she was afraid how Ben would react. So Michael would be there to protect her. He said as soon as they got into the reptile house, he looked away for a second and he heard a shot. So he hadn't seen Lindley shoot Ben, but it was obvious that she had. And then he took off running out of the place, and he heard many more shots ring out as he was leaving. And then he just kept quiet about it. But it was not him, it was not his idea, and he did not know about it. That is what he said. Now, the woman, Ashley, she was offered immunity, and she cooperated with the police. She said that a month before Ben's murder, Lindley told her that Ben was abusing her. She believed it. By the way, we don't know that to be true. We have no information telling us that that is accurate whatsoever. It's just what Lindley was saying to people. Don't forget, though, she had also been cheating. We heard she had cheated with at least 2 men while she was married. So Lindley had told Ashley that he was abusive and asked her if she could get some Percocet because Lindley wanted to poison him with the pills. So Ashley got her 15 pills, and she then crushed them up and put them in a protein shake and fed them to Ben. He got very sick that day, but he lived. And it turned out that there were some texts between Ben and his friend about that shake, saying that he thought Lindley had poisoned him, that he had gotten very sick from it. She had drank it too, and she had not been sick, but he felt she had done something to his portion, and he talked about the money that she was looking to get if he died. So Lindley was charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. Michael was also charged with first-degree murder. In October of 2021, Michael had his trial first, and he was found guilty of first-degree murder. The jury didn't believe his story that he was an innocent bystander, but his charge wound up getting reduced after the fact to second-degree murder, after he agreed to testify against Lindley at her trial. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. Now, I looked up what the sentence for second-degree murder generally is in Missouri, and this is what I found. Second-degree murder is a Class A felony, punishable in Missouri by 10 to 30 years or life in prison. So it's kind of interesting that it's either between 10 and 30 years or life in prison. And he got the worst one, life in prison. Okay. Meanwhile, Lindley's trial began on December 6th, 2021, so a couple months later. She took the stand herself. She said that the shooter was Michael, and she had nothing to do with it. She represented herself as a grieving widow. Prosecutors told the jury that they believed Lindley had devised a plan to kill her husband, first by poisoning his shake, and then when that didn't work, she told Michael that her husband was abusive and asked him to pull the trigger for her. So it was her idea and So, as I said, the jury got to do the sentencing. That's how it works there, apparently, and the judge would later uphold this decision, although he said he disagreed with it. So the judge could have said, I disagree, and he could have changed it, but I think they only do that in rare cases. So he suggested that he disagreed with the verdict for second-degree murder instead of first-degree. And referring to the jury's decision, he said, quote, I don't know what they were thinking. Somehow they got confused. In my view, taking you out of the equation, speaking to Lindley, his brother would still be alive. His brother referring to Sam's brother. So he's saying if taking Lindley out of the equation, Ben would still be alive. You're awfully lucky, ma'am. You're going to get out in your 40s. And my 40s weren't too bad. I just hope you don't kill again. End quote. That makes me shake my head. But that is the case. What are your thoughts? I will share some of mine. First of all, rest in peace to Ben Renick. He'd been through so much loss in his life. He lost his childhood home, he lost both of his parents, and given all of that, at only 29, he had a successful business. He was a great father to 2 children, and he sounded like a wonderful person. Unfortunately, he chose the wrong woman for his wife, and that ultimately led to his murder. My heart goes out to his children, his family, and friends for their loss, and to the community that he was a part of, the whole reptile community. So what do I think happened here? I pretty much side with the prosecution in Lindley's case that she had decided she was going to take the life of her husband, which sounds to me like premeditated murder. Okay, not second degree, but first degree. So she made that decision. She first tried to poison him. That didn't work. So she asked Michael to do it for her. Whether she offered him money for it, or she truly had a guy who cared about her and wanted to save her from the abuse by, getting rid of her husband. I don't know exactly why he did it. It's probably one of those two. I don't know which one, but either way, he did it. That's a crime, no doubt. That's also premeditated, if that's the way it happened. So the both of them should have gotten first degree, and he originally did. He did get charged or convicted of first degree, but they reduced it because he said he would testify. So anyway, that is what I think happened. He pulled the trigger, but it was her idea, which makes her either more guilty than him or equally, in my opinion, even if she didn't physically do it. Now, how did the jury come to this insane conclusion? I have no idea. Why it wasn't a slam dunk for first degree murder when they knew, I assume they knew, what Michael Humphrey had been convicted of, and they knew his sentence was a life sentence. Why did they give her second degree? What was that about? Either they think that what was in their head? How did they see this Why so short? What is that about? And you know what? Maybe the judge should have not upheld the jury's decision. I mean, clearly they were not a very bright